This is the Know-Hows of Real Estate, and today's guest is Heidi Castaneda. She is a notary, and we have a lot of notaries nowadays in the escrow business, and it really kind of started. Maybe Heidi can uh, put her 2 cents in there as when it really got going, but I think when COVID hit, it got a little bit more of the notary going in instead of the escrow officer. So, anyway, I'd like to introduce Heidi Castaneda. Heidi, how are you? Good afternoon.
Doing well. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for having me here. I'm excited
Yeah, we're
to
looking forward to it.
to be here. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, excellent. So, go ahead and just give us a little background of yourself and how did you get involved in the notary business?
Yes, absolutely. So, a little bit about my background is I was in banking. I started my notary commission back in 2007, and then I took a little break, and then I decided to become a notary loan signing agent in 2019. A couple of years after, that's when we had the boom for COVID. But I decided to become a notary loan signing agent because I understood that there was an area of opportunity in our industry. There were a lot of notaries, but not a lot of educated notaries that really understood the whole aspect of our closings. So I thought that I could use my background and my area of expertise and just incorporate all that into this industry. And now I'm here as one of your notary loan signings.
Well,
Excellent.
that's
I think
good.
we have you coming up on one here pretty soon too, as well. But look forward
Yes,
to that too.
absolutely.
What you got there, Mister Mike?
Well, I was going to say you talk about, and maybe just for specifics here, notary loan signing, right? What's the difference between just a normal notary that you just go to have certain documents notarized?
Absolutely. That's actually a very great question because a lot of people don't know the difference between a notary and a notary loan signing agent. So, a notary is an officer that is appointed through the Secretary of State. They are impartial witnesses. They are verifying a client, identifying a client through acceptable forms of identification. A notary's responsibility is making sure that a client is executing documents without any duress, that they're not blindsided, that they are coherent, and they have the capacity of executing these documents. In other words, a notary is there to deter fraud or to prevent fraud. Now, a notary does offer different services, and one of those services is being a notary loan signing agent. There's actually different acronyms for our title. A lot of us know us as closers for real estate transactions, loan
Mhm.
signing agents. But what a notary loan signing does is that they specialize more on the real estate transactions. So, for example, if we have a buyer that is purchasing a home, if we have someone that is selling their property, if we have someone that is refinancing a property, that's where the notary loan signing agent would come into play. And that role is making sure that they are going over a client's documentation at the closing and that they are providing an overview and that our clients understand their transactions. Now, in order for a loan signing agent to be a notary loan signing agent, they do have to be a notary. So even though it's different services, they do go hand in hand because they're both equally important.
Do you, when you get a client of ours, um, now we don't really get to go ahead and find you. The title companies already had you employed, or you um, work with, not really work with them, but assigned to them. So when the documents come out and everything, do you go through all those documents that um, the escrow officer would go through and know for the questions that the client may have when you go to their house or meet them somewhere else?
Absolutely. And there's actually a misconception when it comes to the notary loan signing agent role. So a notary is there to make sure that their client understands their transaction. And I hear that this a lot where it says, a notary is not allowed to answer any questions, or they're just there to witness a client sign and date a document or their transactions. That is incorrect. That's how you're going to be able to tell if you have an educated notary versus a not an educated notary. So it's actually a disservice for a client to not understand what they're doing. And again, going back to our role as notaries, a client is not allowed to sign documents blindsided. They need to know what they're doing. You know, a lot of times our clients, you know these are very important transactions. There's a lot of emotions. It can be a client that is selling a property where they lost their loved one. It can be a first time home buyer, and just to have someone that is going to walk them through their closing, that understands how a closing should be executed, is very important. um, for services, I believe that we have to be experts, right? My role is to make sure that I'm an expert when it comes to those documents. So I know those documents. Now, notaries are not able to give any advice. We're not able to give our opinion, and we're not able to give any explanation. But we are able, however, to answer clients' questions. And the way that we do so is 99% of the time when a client has a question, it's going to be on the document. We're going to refer their question to the document itself. So it's very important that, their notary loan signing agent is an expert and understands those documents and what they're doing.
Yeah, because I've found a couple of times where we always have gone to our signing, and we always like to go into the escrow office to do the signings, and mainly because I think a couple of times I just felt like um, the notary didn't really know what was going on. They were just there to sign how many pages it was and take them back to the escrow officer. Um, a lot of people do have some questions when they are signing, so it was important to us. And if we go to the office, we feel a little bit more comfortable with it. But um, since I've been using this one title company, it seems like it's been notaries have been good, officers have been good, so there hasn't been really a lot of questions. There is also a lot of fraud going on out there. Do you just take the documents to the title company, or do you fax them back, or scan them back? How do you get back to the title company?
Yes, absolutely. So whenever we are executing a closing, obviously it would depend on the day of the time frame. If it's in the afternoon, what we do is we'll deliver those documents personally first thing the next morning. Or if we are during business hours for our title offices, we will execute those documents right after the closing. So that's usually our process. We go in there, we do the closing, and as soon as we are done or finalizing those documents go straight to escrow, to title offices for processing. We understand that they are date sensitive. We understand that sometimes we have to close first thing in the morning. So obviously we take all that in consideration, and as soon as we can have that file delivered, we will do so.
Awesome.
Perfect. I want to go back real quick because it's really important. You talked about the documents. Just for the folks listening, I'm sure a lot of people kind of guess. On average, let's say in a real estate transaction, how many documents, or maybe you can just list some of the things, just the different documents that you are going through, just to give people an idea of the breadth of information that you need to have to be a very good, effective notary.
Absolutely. So we have those critical documents that we would call, and examples of those documents would be the deed of trust. Obviously, that is a recordable document that gets recorded in the county that basically transfers ownership of making the buyer or seller transferring that ownership over. We have compliance agreements. We have quick claim deeds. We have signature name affidavits, which is verifying the client. Also, it's very important because some of the documents will have specific notarizations. There is a difference between an acknowledgement and a jurat. So usually on a signature name affidavit, we'll have specifically stating that they would have to be under oath, and then we would have to put that client under oath. Usually it is the signature name affidavit, verifying again that they are who they say they are. So it could be the deed, it could be a quick claim deed. We have documents that are very important. People are giving up their rights, right? It's transfer of ownership. So it's very, very important for the notary to really understand and to be aware, and making sure that the client understands what they're doing. There is a lot of fraud. A couple of years ago, we had back in Florida, I believe it was 2 years ago, where they were triggering our elderly community. They were taking advantage of them, having them sign quick claim deeds. They did not know what they're doing. So till this day, we do have a lot of fraud, unfortunately, and we have to be very alert, and we have to be aware, and we need to make sure that our clients understand what they're doing.
Oh, that's so good. And maybe just to dovetail on that, what is the vetting process? Because we hear stories where notaries go in, they don't know all the documents, or they're calling back to the escrow company, or they're just signers. And they get the wrong reputation. In talking with you, obviously, you take it very, very seriously, and just going through your training. What is your vetting process? What would you say is recommended that everyone in your position should have in terms of requirements, certificates, and such?
That is a very good question, and I always take it back. Would we just hire any escrow officer, any title company, any agent? There is a process, right? We would interview that person and see if they would be a good fit for our companies, because at the end of the day, they are representing our companies. They're representing all of us. So it's very important to get to know your notaries, ask them questions. This will be more like on the title aspect, since they are the ones that would hire the notaries, and just interview them. Ask them what is their background, how comfortable they feel when it comes to closings. The NNA is a good source. There are further education that is needed, certifications, as well as insurance, background checks, and that is all covered through the NNA. However, you don't know a person's background. It's basically all of these notaries that go into a database, but if you don't have that interview aspect, you don't know if they're going to be a good fit for you or for your company. So that's something that I would recommend, is call your notaries, whoever you're going to be using, and see if they're going to be a good fit and they're going to be representing, you or everyone overall. And if they do have that background, if they have that professionalism, if they understand the documents, if they are educated, and those are basically a recommendation that I would have, that I would personally take a little bit furthermore to make sure we have a good fit for our
That's
companies
great.
when it comes to notaries.
Thank
I
you.
don't know if you can actually answer this question or not, but what kind of scares me a little bit once in a while, when we have a client that has purchased or sold a house here in this area, and then we work with a lot of 55 plus communities, and then they go back to their home state and they got to finish the transaction back there. And the title company gets a hold of a notary back there in Iowa or Washington or someplace like that. What are those notaries like yourself, or what is it like for you on this end if somebody does a transaction in Iowa and then they got to finish the process here in Phoenix? Is that because obviously you I don't know if you know that area or what you have to know to do that process.
Okay, so let's say the scenario was where I would have an out-of-state client, right? Where they would be basically finishing their transaction here. So what I do is I have to understand what the notary requirements are for them. Because sometimes I believe it's Florida or certain states that will actually require witnesses. Arizona is not a state where we would require a witness for certain documentation to be notarized. However, we do have other states that do require it. So the first thing that I would do is make sure that I go over what are the requirements for that state specifically, where they are going to be doing or executing that transaction. Other than that, it's basically the same thing. I would just make sure that whoever these vetted notaries are, that we do know who they are, that, I believe on SnapDocs, it's actually one of the sources that is used. There's feedback there. You can see their credentials. You can see their background a little bit more. So there are things that help us to determine who these notaries are. And obviously it gives us a little bit more of that comfortable feeling that we know that our clients will be taken care of.
Yeah. It always scares me just a little bit when they go home and then they got to find a notary up there and they got to come to their house or meet them somewhere. So yeah, that's
And
good.
you're hoping they're as good as Heidi, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
well,
right.
I've never met Heidi. This is the first time we've met. So um, you sound really good. I'm educated. That's one thing that, because I mean, it's even like in real estate, being a good realtor. Um, we just don't put signs in the yard. And if you got a realtor that's all they're doing is just putting the sign in the yard, then they got to know what's going on and how to get you through the process. And that's one reason why we started this podcast is the know-hows of real estate. Let people understand that process because everybody just takes it very lightly buying a house and selling a house. It's any challenges that may have pop up.
I think that our biggest challenges was back in COVID. If we were able to survive all that, we had so many things coming up, and we were just, making it work overall. But I think one of the challenges that I ran into is sometimes the client will not have like acceptable form of identification, or sometimes the name. Sometimes the client got married or they never changed their name, or when we were at the closing we find out that they never made those necessary corrections, and it can be a bit of a hiccup. There's always a solution. We still move forward, but I think that's one of the things is just making sure that when we are doing the agreement that we're verifying that there hasn't been like any major changes in their lives where the ID and the name on the deed or title would be different, just so that we keep that transaction smooth. So just being in communication with their clients, I mean, that would help a little bit more. Now, there is a difference between acceptable forms of identification for general notary work, and there are exceptions for loan for real estate transactions. And that's why it's so important for us to know the difference, because we do have certain exceptions and certain IDs that we would be able to use for a real estate transaction. For example, if we have a client that is out of the country, there are specifically IDs that we would be able to use, but they have to have certain requirements. So the identifications that we would use for general notary work would be a little bit different for the loan signing aspect or real estate transaction aspect. So that's why it's very important for a notary to understand the two differences, and for them to understand, what we have in place to better assist our clients.
Excellent.
I have a quick question. What is the benefit then in having a mobile notary like you? And let's just say, what's the benefit to the client, buyer, seller, and the agent? Maybe they're all the same. Now, Kevin, you like to go into the office, which I totally understand. So, what are the advantages, Heidi, of your services, and does it cost clients for your service?
That's actually a very good question. I always see that when we go into a client's house, they're very appreciative. They're very happy about that service. They always say, "Thank you for coming here. Thank you for accommodating the signing," because clients do have busy lives, right? Sometimes they are working, they're trying to figure out life balance, and for us to be able to go at with the client, and it can be at their home, it can be at their workplace. We are everywhere. We're a mobile office, so we make it work. We accommodate the client. And one of the things that I noticed is that clients are very appreciated when we actually go into their homes or we accommodate that for them. They are very thankful. So it all comes back to accommodating for the client, giving them option. What works for you? Would you like for a notary to go out to you? I know sometimes a lot of our elderly clients, they don't like to drive far. So just having that service where you can have a notary go to them and then they don't have to go out of the way, especially if it's a drive for them to go to a title office. It's just more convenient for the client, but just giving the client the option. And when it comes to the fee, the client does not pay anything upfront. So the client will never pay me for the services. These are services that are already in place through title. So title would be the ones responsible for the notary fee, the mobile fee, but not the client. So that's usually the
Gotcha.
process.
Good. And you go to places, hospitals, and I'm sure you go into a lot of different places to get these.
We are
notaries.
everywhere.
Yeah.
We've been in airports, hospitals, where you name it.
Chick-fil-A.
Wherever the client needs us to be, we will be there. Even if they're in breakfast, we have been in restaurants where they're signing down. Yeah, we just accommodate as much as we can. Whatever the client wants, we're there.
You're there. Great. Thank you so much. Kevin?
So you actually, this is your business. You have a business. Do you have a business name?
Yeah, so my business name is HC Notary Services.
So the HC obviously stands for
Heidi Castaneda.
Good job.
Actually, my logo is back there.
There you go. And we will put this on when we do the final edit. We'll make sure that website and email or contact information, your logo is properly displayed.
Thank
Do you ever run
Kevin.
into delays or anything like that? That you probably, like you said before, is probably just the ID and stuff like that. But is there any other delays that come up during a notary?
There is. And in this business, you expect the unexpected, and you have to be ready to just put on your thinking cap and just resolve, right? Every closing is not going to be perfect, and we understand that. So we don't focus on the error, we focus on fixing it right away. So let's say the client we're on a time frame and they have to close right away. We are ready for any situation. I have a mobile scanner. As soon as the documents are signed, they're scanned in to title office. So for whatever reason, if there's a delay, we can't get there, God forbid there's an accident, something out of the ordinary, we always have a backup plan. We always have a backup plan to make sure that these closings are getting executed on a timely manner. We understand these are big transactions. There's a time frame, and we always have a backup plan. So I have a mobile scanner. If we need a fund at the closing table, we can fund at the closing table. I actually have a mobile office in my vehicle. I have a printer in my car. So let's say something is corrected, something needs to be a last minute document that we need to have the client sign. It gets sent right into my printer, and I have the ability of printing from my vehicle. So we're ready to go for any challenges, any obstacles. We always find a way to get it done.
Yeah, I'm going to have to check that vehicle out.
That's right. Next time I need a copy.
You do
I'll
everything.
flag you down.
You have to do everything from your home, it seems like nowadays, and you run into those situations, and you go, "Where should I run into to do this?" But that's awesome.
Yeah, you've thought of everything. That's the kind of person you want to be your notary. That has all that. When things go smooth and when things go a little rough, you'd like to have everything at your disposal. So that sounds good job.
Do you ever call like the agent or anybody to say, "Hey, I'm gonna be with your clients, you're more than welcome to come, or any of that kind of stuff?
It's not very common, but I would say this: if you want to make sure that you're involved, you can always just let your escrow officer know, you know what, I want to be part. I want to make sure that anything that goes on with my client, I want to be aware of. So if we have that on the notes, whatever happens, let's say I'm confirming the appointment with your client, I can actually text you and say, hey, Kevin, just to let you know, I spoke with your client. The appointment has been confirmed. We're going to be meeting this day at this location, just so that I can keep you informed. That is actually an option, and you can always let your escrow officers know. That way, I get that information, and I know that I'm going to be communicating not only with your client, but also with you. So that way, whatever happens with your client, I will also communicate it with you. That's actually also an option. Just let them know. They'll let me know, and I'll make sure that I communicate with you everything that's going overall with your client.
Cool. Awesome. Any final words there, Mr. Mike?
No, I think I've asked everything. Heidi, thank you so much for all of your answers. I mean, I know we threw a lot at you, and I think you might have mentioned it before, but I just want to clarify 3 things that an agent should know about that notary.
Feedback is very important. You know, that's how we become better. That's how we know what we need to work on in our industry. And one of the things that I do is I educate while I'm at the closing to show, when we have an agent there, I'm show coaching how a closing should actually look like. And you shouldn't settle for anything less. That's how your transactions look like. So if you are at a closing, you can always provide feedback, because that's how we know how to be better. That's how we know that we have an area of opportunity in our industry. I like to help our notaries. I like to, show them what I know, because when I came into this industry, I knew there was an area of opportunity. I like to help other notaries as well. This is the way that I do, my closings. Why? Because I want to make sure that other notaries are also delivering, a great service. And sometimes it's just they don't have the education, or they just don't know. So that gives us the opportunity to know that, we can work with other notaries and educate them on how a closing should actually look like. So if you have a notary and you're not happy with their services, we're not going to know, and that notary is not going to know that there's an area of opportunity. So feedback is very important. All the time, I have agents that tell me, Heidi, we've never had a notary. We've never had a signing go this way. They're like, and I just, reiterate to them, this is how your closing should actually be. Yeah. So feedback is very important for us. That's how we're going to be better. We're trying to level up our industry. We're trying to level up our closings. We're representing you, right? We're representing every person that is involved in a transaction, from the agent, from the loan officer, from the title office. You have to remember that we're the last impression to your real estate transactions. And you want to have the best partners. You want to have the best notaries out there as well, because that's how we're building relationships. That's how you're going to get referrals. They're going to remember that last impression, which is your closer, which was your notary.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you to Heidi for coming in and doing this today. And I've learned a lot. And I feel a little bit more comfortable with notaries, as long as we can get somebody like Heidi.
Well, thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Mike. And I'm glad that I was able to help a little around and tell you how a closing should actually look like.
How it should be done.
We take our clients very seriously, and we want everything to be, we're not all going to be perfect about it, but we want them to enjoy, and big decisions they're doing is selling a house and buying a house and stuff like that. There's a lot of money involved in it nowadays. So
a lot of emotions.
Thank you very much.
Yes. And the true meaning of a closer, right? You bring in Heidi to close it. That's who you want. Consistency. Thank you, Heidi. Thanks, Kevin, for letting me be part of this again.
Yeah, it's been great.